quick whistle-stop tour through the three main territories. So Qatar, you'll see these principles reflected in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. There is a constitutional right to privacy under Article 37 of the Constitution, and that safeguards the privacy of the person, their family affairs, and their correspondence. That's backed up then by the Articles 331 to 334 of the Criminal Code, which basically create a criminal offence for disclosing people's secrets or personal information without their consent. And actually, on that note on consent, I think one of the key takeaways, I guess, from this is a lot of the laws, a lot of the principles, a lot of the criminal laws, effectively, they can all be mitigated through obtaining consent from the relevant individual. So effectively, sometimes what we tell organizations when they're doing business in the Middle East is that the key thing you should do in terms of managing your compliance across all these myriad laws is just get the consent of the individual to do whatever you want to do with their data. And that will pretty much cover you, I think, 99% of your compliance needs if you've got the individual's consent. In addition to the Constitution in Qatar, you also have to take account of Sharia principles in the Quran, which is not up on that slide, but effectively it underpins the Constitution in Qatar, and effectively there's almost parallel systems of jurisprudence. So you've got the legislation, and then where there's interpretive gaps in the legislation, judges may seek to apply Sharia principles in order to do justice in accordance with Sharia principles. So the Quran prohibits spying and again calls for the respect for the privacy of an individual's household. And sometimes when people do bring actions for breach of their privacy in these territories, when a judge is calculating compensation due to the individual, it'll apply sort of Quranic principles of sort of restitution and justice in terms of understanding what harm has happened to the individual. Sector-specific laws. There's financial services, I guess, stands out. Financial services, obviously, one thing you've got to remember is, banks are subject to banking confidentiality rules wherever they operate. And all three of these territories impose banking confidentiality obligations. In addition, within Qatar, you've got the QFC, the Qatar Financial Centre. And I don't know if many of you know this, but basically you've got free zones in Dubai and in Qatar. QFC and the DIFC are effectively pieces of, territories that are about the same size as St. John's College, and they exist within, the wider city of Doha and Dubai. And effectively, if you walk out, it's as if you walked out of St. John's College with a laptop, that would be considered a data transfer. Which you need to make sure effectively when you go home at night. I work in the DIFC. Sometimes when I go home at night, I need to make sure that I'm complying with the DIFC data protection laws in terms of what I've got on my laptop. And it's sort of little things like that there you need to understand is that there are separate legal systems operating within very small territories within the Middle East. And again, that can create issues for organizations that have multiple offices across the Middle East, and again, multiple offices within Doha. You can have one inside the QFC, one outside the QFC. Both are subject to very different regulatory regimes. E-commerce, there are laws that apply to e-commerce service providers, again, which require them to tell users what they're collecting their data for, to basically only tell them the purposes that they're going to use the data for, and to only use individuals' data, again, with the consent of the individual. I think it's very important, again, that you seek consent. Telecommunications providers are required to have due regard for privacy, to protect data, to put in place measures to protect the security of individuals' data. And again, they can only collect, use, retain, advertise, use people's data for marketing with their consent, which again is a key message. Employers all across the Middle East, there's duties on employers to maintain records of employees. Again, immigration are very controlled in and out of those territories. And one of the ways that the governments enforce that is by employers keeping detailed records of employees. And so as an employer, you've got independent obligations, again, to collect data and to process data. And as I've already mentioned, criminal acts. You've got the Penal Code, which deals with disclosure of information that you have an obligation of confidence in respect of. And you've also got the cybercrime law, which came out recently this year, which creates offences around interception of individuals' data. So hacking offences in particular are criminal acts, which I guess, again, create not so much obligations on organisations to protect data, but penalise organisations that are trying to get unauthorised access to individuals' data.